Hey everybody, what's going on? Hellmite here, bringing you another video from Grab the Lantern today. It's Tuesday, and the patch notes for patch 8.11 have been posted, and that means it's time for another patch note rundown. As always, I'll be going through the biggest changes in this week's patch and letting you guys know what you can be looking forward to in the coming weeks. 8.11 has the giant marksman changes, a lot more jungle tweaks in order to help things feel a little bit better, and a brand new champion. So let's go ahead and dive right into the changes. There is a lot to talk about today, guys, so I highly recommend you read the patch notes or try to skip ahead in the video to see what is going on. First up, Pike, the Blood Harbor Ripper, is in this patch, so if you are looking forward to playing as the newest stab-happy support, he will be probably enabled later this weekend, so go ahead and get prepared for him. He looks like he's going to be a lot of fun, so we'll see how he shapes up. Next up, moving on to the marksman changes. Now, marksmen are getting some fairly substantial changes in this patch. In general, Riot are trying to make them the late-game carries they're supposed to be, not the mid-game carries that they currently are, and helping to bring back lane bully champions in the bottom lane like Lucian and Draven, who aren't currently served by the item system and who generally feel like they don't have a place in the game. First up, marksmen in general are becoming squishier and less sustainable in lane, which will hopefully bring back lane bullies. All marksmen are losing health regen and base attack damage, but gain slightly more attack damage growth, so they should be back to their regular AD values at about level 9 and will only get better from there, so in order to shift more of their damage from early to late game. Additionally, they're losing armor in exchange for health, which again will help them make them feel a little squishier. In addition, the base AD they're losing early on will make it so that they can't quite poke down supports like Leona or Brand just via auto attacks in the early game, and so that will help those kind of champions thrive better in the bottom lane and will help them not get poked down immediately and then be irrelevant for the rest of laning phase. On top of that, Fleet Footwork's haste has been reduced, and it no longer grants additional healing on crit, and the percent heal on minions has been reduced even further for ranged champions. You only get 20% of its heal value if you are ranged, and it's now up to 100% if you are a melee champion. So Fleet Footwork will feel pretty bad on marksman now. It's still an option if you want to sustain and will be better in the later game, but it will be pretty bad in the early game and won't give you the option of just kind of AFK farming it out. So in general, marksman will be weaker in the early game. On top of that, marksman itemization has been fairly substantially reworked. First, crit is generally more expensive across the board. If you are building an item with crit in it, it is more expensive now. On top of that, Cloak of Agility has been removed from the game entirely. Instead, Brawler's Glove has had a price increase without gaining any additional crit chance. So again, if you are purchasing crit, you are going to spend a lot more time building up to your items. Speaking of crit, Infinity Edge has had a rework. Its price has been increased to 3,700 gold and now builds out of 2 BF swords. It no longer grants you critical strike chance or increases your critical strike damage, but it doubles any crit strike chance you currently have built. Additionally, 15% of your crit damage is converted to true damage, so you'll be just as good at grinding through tanks as you were before, but not quite as good at just straight up bursting squishies, and it is no longer a rush item. Please don't build this item first. It will do nothing for you until you have crit built already. On top of that, some other marksman items have been reworked. Essence Reaver is the biggest one. Its price has been reduced to 3,200 gold and now builds out of a BF sword, a Caulfield's Warhammer, and a Sapphire Crystal. It no longer grants you critical strike chance or mana restore whenever you crit, but your auto attacks will restore 1% of your missing mana each time you auto attack. Additionally, your first auto attack after casting your ultimate will grant you Essence Flare, causing you to gain 30% attack speed and causing auto attacks to refund 20% of your non-ultimate cooldowns for 8 seconds. So if you're a caster marksman like Ezreal or Lucian, this is now a great item for you and you will feel much better served by it than you did with crit itemization. On top of that, for caster AD carries or AD carries that just want their first auto attack to really hurt, there is Storm Razor, a new item that costs 3,200 gold and which builds out of a BF sword, a pickaxe, and a dagger. It grants 70 attack damage and 30% attack speed. And if you haven't attacked in the last 3 seconds, your next auto attack is guaranteed to critically strike for 160% damage instead of 200% damage, and will grant you bonus movement speed. So champions like Draven and Jhin will feel very good about Storm Razor. Essence Reaver is a good item if you're a caster AD carry, and if you're a traditional crit AD carry like Tristana or Caitlyn, you will still want an Infinity Edge, just maybe not as your first item. Last Whisper and Lord Dominic's Regards have also been tweaked. They now have total armor penetration instead of bonus armor penetration. So again, they'll be good items to go to if you're up against armor stacking tanks. And lifesteal items have had their price reduced. Blade of the Rune King and Bloodthirster will now be much better items, especially if you need to rush them into a difficult lane. So, marksmen in general will have some fairly substantial changes to their builds. Don't cookie cutter build it. We're going to have to play around and see how the new system works, and I should have a podcast up about that later today, talking about what marksman itemization might be like in the future, so stay tuned for that. Moving on to champions. Generally speaking, junglers have been touched across the board, hitting the outliers, both the too strong and the not strong enough. Graves is being nerfed in this patch to kick things off. He's a little too strong due to how scrappy the jungle is post 8.10, and he is the king of scrap. So his base attack damage has been reduced, and his R's cooldown has been increased to make him a little bit easier to fight in the early stages of the game. Kha'Zix is being nerfed in this patch as well. He's way too strong thanks to his level 6 ganking power, but Riot don't want to remove his ability to drop aggro in teamfights with his ultimate. So his evolved ultimate will no longer grant him stealth or movement speed whenever he enters a brush. However, its cooldown has been lowered at later ranks, and the evolved stealth duration has been increased to 2 full seconds, and now gives you an additional cast. So you'll get 3 casts of Void Assault when you have evolved that ability. So Kha'Zix should feel slightly better in teamfights, slightly worse when trying to get those free level 6 ganks. Kindred are being buffed in this patch. They were hit way too hard by these scuttle changes that made it so that everyone and their mom were trying to kill them. So their mark's respawn timer has been reduced by 10 seconds, so they'll get more marks. The first mark will spawn earlier in the game, and assists on Scuttle Crab will now grant you marks. So don't feel afraid to call your buddies up to help with the Scuttle Crab. All you have to do is just help them with it, and you will still get a mark. Lee Sin is being buffed in this patch. I don't really know why, I'll be completely honest, but he is. So his passive's energy restore has been increased, and his abilities will now have CDR apply to them, to the reactivations, I should say. So Lee Sin can sit on his Q for longer and will have longer windows to wait on both Cripple and Iron Will. So Lee Sin will be stronger as in this patch and will have more opportunities to make plays. On top of that, Xin Zhao, everyone's favorite Spearmaster, is being nerfed in this patch as well. He's too strong in the new jungle, as with Graves, but the problem is not with his early game strength, it's that he doesn't pay for it enough in the mid game. So his AD growth has been decreased, and his E slow has been reduced as well, so he'll be less able to stick to targets in the mid game, and won't be hitting quite as hard in the mid game as well, but his early game strengths will still be intact, so you should still be watching for Lee Sin crawling into your jungle and killing you at your red buff. On top of that, a few other assorted changes. Rakan is being nerfed in this patch. He's too good at sustaining and at hard engage, which is sort of makes him good at everything. So his sustain is being reduced to compensate. His Q's base heal has been reduced, and his E's shield has been decreased as well. So Rakan won't be as good playing passively. He will need to be looking for those grand entrance engages. Taliyah is also being nerfed in this patch. She's too good in pro play due to her wave clear, but she's also not good enough in solo queue. People aren't able to get as much mileage out of her. So these changes are an attempt to streamline her in both environments. Her base movement speed and health have been increased, and her passive max movement speed has been increased as well, and the combat lockout has been decreased, so Taliyah will have more movement speed, better roams, and slightly better health pool so she can trade more effectively in the early game. However, she does pay for these buffs. Her Q no longer deals area of effect damage. If you are not hit by the rock, you will not take damage from the rock. To compensate though, minions will no longer take reduced damage from additional rocks, so she can still chunk through the front line of minions. And if she's on worked ground, the ability will only cost 1 mana instead of refunding the mana entirely. Additionally, the cooldown has been decreased at early rank, so Taliyah will get more Qs early on in the game. Her W's cooldown has been normalized to 12 seconds, which is a buff across the board. Her E's initial and explosion damage has been reduced, but the trigger damage is unchanged, so knocking people through your E with your W will still deal full damage. And the R wall duration has been normalized to 5 seconds from 6, 7, and 8 seconds respectively, which is a total nerf. So hopefully these changes make Taliyah a little bit better to play as if you're just a solo queue hero, and a little worse to play as if you are a pro trying to just endlessly wave clear in the mid lane. Moving on to a bunch of random changes, miscellaneous changes that Riot have added to this patch that are still important to know. Banner of Command and Shurelya's Reverie have both been changed. Banner of Command no longer grants the affected minion immunity to magic damage. Instead, the promoted minion takes 70% less damage from champions. So it'll be generally more tanky. Attack damage champions will spend much longer trying to kill it, but it won't make mages cry, unfortunately. Shurelya's Reverie additionally has had its price increased and grants less movement speed, but now also has mana regen in the build. It does build out of a Fairy Charm now. Hopefully this makes it a little more enticing to the supports that should be building it, and less enticing to champions named Vladimir who keep abusing it in the mid lane. Moving on to some more systemic changes, Nexus and Inhibitor turrets will only regenerate to the top of their current third HP. What this means is that if we siege in the mid lane and we chunk an Inhibitor tower down to 50% HP, it can't regenerate back to full. It will only regenerate to 66% of its maximum HP and will cap there. If we knock it down to, let's say, 20% HP, it can only regenerate back to 33% HP, not all the way up. So this means that it's slightly easier to siege. You don't have to kill the tower in one go. Even just doing enough damage will stick to it, basically. Baron's damage has been reduced, so it shouldn't just straight up kill teams as it currently does. And Scuttle Crab will now respawn less often and has had its shrine duration increased to compensate, but other jungle monsters will grant more XP to compensate for the fact that you won't have as many Scuttle Crabs. This should make junglers that are unable to contest Scuttle Crabs feel slightly better about their early games, as they won't be as starved of XP. Finally, ARAM is receiving some pretty substantial changes in this patch. I won't go through all of them, but suffice to say, there's a lot going on there, including new items, base gates are being there, early surrender has been knocked down, and there is an expanded free champion pool for ARAMs specifically. So not every champion is free, but the last 3 weeks of free-to-play champions will be included in your ARAM pool. So if you have an ARAM-only account, I don't feel sorry for you at all. You'll have to play more champions than just Lux and Nidalee and Sona. Anyways, that's going to be it for me today, guys. Thank you so very much for watching. Go ahead and let me know which changes you're most excited for down in the comment section below. Really excited to both try out Pyke and see how the jungle is going to shape up after the top tier champions have been knocked down a peg. But let me know what you guys are looking forward to in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and leave a like. And if you really enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days as well. And if you're looking for more Grab the Lantern content, you can check out my blog, linked down in the description. I upload an article just about each and every single day for your enjoyment. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it. And I'll talk to you all later.